Hi kids, we are going to finish reading the story. If you have not seen my videos 1 and 2, you should watch them because I talked about the exposition, which is where they said that this takes place in South America at the lighthouse. It talks about the characters, the narrator, Laglio and Ichiwa, and it set the tone, which is kind of eerie and creepy. Then we had the rising action, which was when the ship sank, and we discovered that that's because of the rats, and then the rats were getting close and on the lighthouse, and Laglio, Ichiwa, and the narrator were hoping that the rats would not get in. Now, the climax of the story is where I left off, where the rats do get in, so I am going to read from that part to the end. So you can see this is the climax, then you have the falling action, and the resolution, which is the ending. When you guys do a narrative next week, which will be due on May 8th, you should include dialogue. You should include the 5 parts: exposition, rising action, climax, falling action, conclusion, and you should try to use some figurative language and conflict if possible. So here we go. At 2 in the morning, while Ichiwa was dozing in his room, the sheet of metal sealing his window gave way. The chief had just time enough to leap to his feet and cry for help, the rats swarming over him. But Laglio and I, who had been watching from the lantern room, got to him immediately, and the 3 of us battled with the hordes of maddened rats which flowed through the gaping window. They bit. We struck them down with our knives and retreated. We locked the door of the room on them, but before we had time to bind our wounds, the door was eaten through and gave way, and we retreated up the stairs, fighting off the rats that leaped on us from the knee-deep swarm. I do not remember to this day how we ever managed to escape. All I can remember is wading through them up the stairs, striking them off as they swarmed over us, and then we found ourselves bleeding from innumerable bites, our clothes shredded, sprawled across the trapdoor in the floor of the lantern room, without food or drink. Luckily, the trapdoor was metal, set into the granite with iron bolts. The rats occupied the entire light beneath us, and on the floor of our retreat lay some 20 of their fellows, who had gotten in with us before the trapdoor closed and whom we had killed with our knives. Below us in the tower, we could hear the screams of the rats as they devoured everything edible that they found. Those on the outside squealed in reply and writhed in a horrible curtain as they stared at us through the glass of the lantern room. Ichiwa sat up and stared silently at his blood, trickling from the wounds on his limbs and body and running in thin streams on the floor around him. Laglio, who was in as bad a state, and so was I for that matter, stared at the chief and me vacantly, started as his gaze swung to the multitude of rats against the glass, then suddenly began laughing horribly. Hee! The 3 skeletons. Hee! The 3 skeletons are now 6 skeletons. 6 skeletons! He threw his head back and howled, his eyes glazed, a trickle of saliva running from the corners of his mouth and thinning the blood flowing over his chest. I shouted to him to shut up, but he did not hear me, so I did the only thing I could to quiet him. I swung the back of my hand across his face. The howling stopped suddenly, and his eyes swung around the room. Then he bowed his head and began weeping softly, like a child. Notice the figurative language. Our darkened light had been noticed from the mainland, and as dawn was breaking, the patrol was there to investigate the failure of our light. Looking through my binoculars, I could see the horrified expression on the faces of the officers and crew when, the daylight strengthening, they saw the light completely covered by a seething mass of rats. They thought, as I afterwards found out, that we had been eaten alive. But the rats had also seen the ship where had scented the crew. As the ship drew nearer, a solid phalanx left the light, plunged into the water, and swimming out, attempted to board her. They would have succeeded as the ship was hove to. You can look at the footnote to see what that means. But the engineer connected his steam to a hose on the deck and scalded the head of the attacking column, which slowed them up long enough for the ship to get under way and leave the rats behind. Then the sharks took part. Belly up, mouths gaping, they arrived in swarms and scooped up the rats, sweeping through them like a sickle through wheat. That was one day that sharks really served a useful purpose. The remaining rats turned tail, swam to the shore, and emerged dripping. As they neared the light, their comrades greeted them with shrill cries, with what sounded like a derisive note predominating. They answered angrily and mingled with their fellows. From the several tussles that broke out, it seemed as if they resented being ridiculed for their failure to capture the ship. But all this did nothing to get us out of our jail. The small ship could not approach, but steamed around the light at a safe distance. And the tower must have seemed fantastic, some weird, many-mouthed beast hurling defiance at them. Finally, seeing the rats running in and out of the tower, through the door and the windows, those on the ship decided that we had perished and were about to leave when Ichua, regaining his senses, thought of using the light as a signal. He lit it, and using a plank placed and withdrawn before the beam to form the dots and dashes, quickly sent out our story to those on the vessel. Our reply came quickly. When they understood our position, how we could not get rid of the rats, Leglio's mind going fast, Ichua and myself covered with bites, cornered in the lantern room without food or water, they had a signalman send us their reply. His arms swinging like those of a windmill, he quickly spelled out, "Don't give up. Hang on a little longer. We'll get you out of this." Then she turned and steamed at top speed for the coast, leaving us little reassured. She was back at noon, accompanied by the supply ship, 2 small Coast Guard boats, and the fireboat, a small squadron. At 12:30, the battle was on. After a short reconnaissance, the fireboat picked her way slowly through the reefs until she was close to us, then turned her powerful jet of water on the rats. The heavy stream tore the rats from their places and hurled them screaming into the water, where the sharks gulped them down. But for every 10 that were dislodged, 7 swam ashore, and the stream could do nothing to the rats within the tower. Furthermore, some of them, instead of returning to the rocks, boarded the fireboat, and the men were forced to battle them hand to hand. They were true rats of Holland, fearing no man, fighting for the right to live. Nightfall came, and it was as if nothing had been done. The rats were still in possession. One of the patrol boats stayed by the island. The rest of the flotilla departed for the coast. We had to spend another night in our prison. Leglio was sitting on the floor babbling about skeletons, and as I turned to Ichua, he fell unconscious from his wounds. I was in no better shape and could feel my blood flaming with fever. Somehow the night dragged by, and by the next afternoon I saw a tug accompanied by the fireboat come from the mainland with a huge barge in tow. Through my glasses, I saw that the barge was filled with meat. Now you can think about what they could use the meat for. Risking the treacherous reefs, the tug dragged the barge as close to the island as possible. To the last rat, our besiegers deserted the rock, swam out, and boarded the barge reeking with the scent of freshly cut meat. The tug dragged the barge about a mile from shore, where the fireboat drenched the barge with gasoline. A well-placed incendiary shell from the patrol boat set it on fire. The barge was covered with flames immediately, and the rats took to the water in swarms. But the patrol boat bombarded them with shrapnel from a safe distance, and the sharks finished off the survivors. A whaleboat from the patrol boat took us off the island and left 3 men to replace us. By nightfall, we were in the hospital in Cayenne. What became of my friends? Well, Leglio's mind had cracked, and he was raving mad. They sent him back to France and locked him up in an asylum, the poor devil. Ichua died within a week. A rat's bite is dangerous in that hot, humid climate, and infection sets in rapidly. As for me, when they fumigated the light and repaired the damage done by the rats, I resumed my service there. Why not? No reason why such an incident should keep me from finishing out my service there, is there? Besides, I told you I liked the place. To be truthful, I've never had a post as pleasant as that one, and when my time came to leave it forever, I tell you that I almost wept as 3 Skeleton Key disappeared below the horizon. So, if you think about what this story has, it has conflict, dialogue, suspense, foreshadowing. If we had been at school, I probably would have shown you that if you go back and look at it again, you can see hints of what might happen. What you're going to do is write a story. I'm going to have a document where you do brainstorming, like where you think of at least one character, you think of setting, okay, and then you're going to actually write a narrative on a subject of your choice. You can email me if you have any questions, but I just wanted to show you this so that you would have a model. It doesn't have to be dark like this. This just happened to be the story that I had scanned that I could use. It could be uplifting, it could be way happier in tone, that's fine. So just email me if you have any questions, and the brainstorming list and the narrative will be due on Friday, May 8th. Have a good day, everybody. Bye.